at the end. So we see this thing kind of laid out as a sermon, and one of the reasons that Solomon refers to himself as the preacher. Well, I don't know why it is in the world that people sometimes question authorship. You know, unless Paul said, hey, this is Paul, me writing to you, then everybody says, well, do we really know it was Paul? And that sort of stuff. So there are questions that I ran across while studying that question the authorship here. But when he says the son of David, the king in Jerusalem, only one person fits that description. So it has to be Solomon. How can anyone question that authorship? What about inspiration? All spirit is inspired. Did God inspire somebody to pretend to be Solomon? You know, why would they do something like that? So I think we can pretty much be rest assured that it is Solomon, but he does not refer to himself as a king. He refers to himself as a preacher. He's not acting as a king. He's not saying, okay, I'm a ruler and I'm going to make y'all do all of this stuff, which a king had the option of doing. He spoke as a preacher. And he only refers to himself as a king 2 times in the whole book. Once here in verse 1 and again down in verse 12, I've been king over Israel. So only 2 times he speaks of himself, but he was preaching a sermon. He wanted to be a preacher. He didn't want to be known as a king. He wanted to be known as someone who is preaching this information. Perhaps Solomon was not overly excited about being remembered by his kingship. He didn't do absolutely the best job at that. So maybe the concept of, you know, I'm a preacher. I'm not the king. Don't remember me as being a king. Maybe that's how he wanted to be remembered. Okay, so verse 2, the famous lines here that we all are familiar with when we say Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Wow, that's kind of a depressing way to begin a conversation or a study like this. And actually, at the end of the book, he repeats the same thing. It's vanity. Well, so vanity. What is that's the question in plight of Solomon's analysis. Is it true that nothing in humankind has any value at all? That it's all vanity? Well, pardon? Compared to eternity, it's nothing, and that's basically the concept that Solomon is going to end up with, is all of the things, and we'll notice that it takes all the way through chapter 1 and into chapter 2 before he even mentions God. Okay, so without God, yes, everything is vanity. Do you have a comment? And that is the general theme of this whole book and the whole study. Solomon's analysis here, the word in Hebrew means futility, emptiness, of no value. This is an important focal point to understand where the preacher's going to take us. That term occurs 38 times in this 12 chapters. So repetition. Do you think he wants us to understand that? Is he trying to make a point here? I like the translation of the word that means of no redeeming or lasting value. That makes it seem a little bit more, rather than just saying vanity, it's all worthless. Well, what sort of redeeming value? Not meaning to be selfish or that point of view, but basically he's saying, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this? Of all of the stuff here that's going on? Then this repetition, the Holy of Holies, the heaven of heavens. Paul said, I'm a Hebrew of Hebrews. Repeating that point just means pay attention to it. It's the ultimate of what I'm talking about. Speaking of Holy of Holies, and this is a little side irk, anybody happen to see on the calendar what yesterday was? Yom Kippur? The day that the high priest went into the Holy of Holies. It's the Day of Atonement, okay? So the Jews would be getting their sins, we always say rolled forward, but anyway, forgiven for a year, and that was yesterday, for what that's worth. When I read Holy of Holies, I thought, well, okay, I can bring that up. Even though all is vanity, even the thought that all is vanity and trying to figure that out, what is that? Vanity. So we see the circle of things coming around. Is this a new concept here coming along? Melvin, Psalms 39, verse 5 and 6. Johnny, what about Psalm 62, 9? Marlon, Jeremiah 2, 5 and 8. And Johnny, hold your thumb at 62 because I'm going to push you to 144 also in Psalms, okay? What about it, Melvin? What does Psalms 39, 5 and 6 say?
Behold, you have made my days as handbreadth, and my lifetime as nothing in your sight. Surely every man at his best is a mere breath. Surely every man walks about as a phantom. Surely they make an uproar from nothing. He amasses riches and does not know who will gather them.
Vanity. Life is just a breath. Johnny, what you got over there in Psalm 62, 9? You do 62, 9 because you are Johnny, and you do 144, 4 because you're Johnny as well. If you're of low esteem or if you're high esteem, when it's all over, you all go up. They're just a breath. So this concept is all through the Old Testament here. Johnny, what do you got in 144? Yeah. That was Psalms 144, 4. Okay, like a breath, like a fleeting shadow. Marlon, what about Jeremiah 2, 5 and 8?
Thus says the Lord, what wrong did your fathers find in method? They went far from me and went after worthlessness and became worthless. Verse 8 says, the priest did not say, where is the Lord? Those who handle the law did not know me. Shepherds transgressed against me. The prophets prophesied my Balaam went after things that do not profit.
So following things that are not of God are of no profit. And we see that in Psalms, which was written about the same time as Solomon, Jeremiah. Okay, is this totally an Old Testament concept here? All right, I've got the same guys here reading. What about you, Melvin? 1 Peter 1:18. Johnny with the sheep or the goats, depending upon. Acts 14:15. Jimmy, you got Ephesians 4:17. Ephesians 4:17. What about you, Melvin? Yes, sir.
Knowing that you were not redeemed with perishable things like silver or gold, for your futility way of life inherited from your forefathers.
The futile way of life. This New Testament stuff here. Acts 14:15. turn from vain things to a living God. So we see this same concept. We got one more here, Ephesians 4:17. In the futility of his mind, of their minds. So we see the same concept of vanity and futility throughout the Old Testament, also into the New Testament. And Solomon, way early on, is already hitting on this stuff. In his wisdom, he sees all of this. He conducts his experiments to learn the meaning of life. He arrived at one conclusion, the last verse in this whole book: fear God and keep his commandments. What had Solomon learned about not keeping God's commandments? He had a pretty good lesson in that. So is he qualified to speak on this subject? Yes, indeed, he is. All right, so to support this thesis in all vanity, he uses examples from the natural world here. He asks, what advantage, I'm in verse 3, what advantage does man have in all his work which he does under the sun? Okay, so advantage appears only in the book of Hebrews, only in the book of Ecclesiastes, the Hebrew word, that's where my mind went, okay? The Hebrew word appears only in the book of Ecclesiastes. It appears 10 times, meaning advantage or excels or profit. He has this kind of use of a commercial term here, profit loss, which kind of fits our earlier definition of what gain do I have, what good do I get out of this. All right, I'm asking the same people, who wants to read me one more scripture here? I'm looking for Mark 8:36. What about you, Lee? You got it? Mark 8:36. Is this a new concept of what does it gain me? What advantage do I have? That's what Solomon is asking. What does Mark 8:36 say? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? Who said that? Christ said it. So, what about this concept? Is this a worthwhile concept that Solomon is talking about here? Well, if Jesus himself is giving the same approach, I think that gives us a good example here. Under the sun is mentioned 39 times, and once again, only in Ecclesiastes. There's no advantage to what you do, verse 3, what advantage, which he does under the sun. 39 times, basically meaning no matter what time it is, no matter where you are. Now, I guess it was Magellan, whoever figured out round, but maybe Solomon didn't know this at the time. He might have already figured it out. But when he talks about the sun, if it's under the sun, somebody's under the sun even at midnight tonight. The sun shines on somebody, right? So it doesn't matter where you are or when you're talking about, when he says of no profit under the sun. Okay, so he uses 4 examples from nature. A generation goes, bless you over there. Verse 4, a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. Well, the earth remains, but men come and go. God created the world, created the earth for what? For man, for mankind. That's what the earth was created for. What did he use to make the first man? From the earth, okay? But what happens with the earth as it spins and goes? Solomon says generation goes and a generation comes. While some of us are getting old and dying, there are new babies being born, and that cycle just keeps on going. And after you get old like me and you die, what do we return to? return to dust, back to the earth. So we see Solomon's concept here of just vanity. It just goes round and round. We got new generations, we got old generations, and basically we're coming right back to dirt. It is ironic that the earth endures, although made for the benefit of man, while man himself dies and returns to the earth. Okay, so next we see also the sun rises and the sun sets and hastens to its place and rises there again. What's the sun doing? In Solomon's day, he just saw it come up and go down. You know, the earth is round, but the word here of hastening to its place translates to panting. Panting like a runner. The sun is just rushing. It's panting. It's coming up and it's rushing. It's in a race to get. And then what's it going to do again? It's like a runner on a track that never stops running. He never reaches the finish line. He's going round and round and round and round and panting and getting more and more tired. So we see this example of the futility of the sun. The wind, verse 6, blowing toward the south, then turning toward the north, the wind continues swirling around, and on its circular course the wind returns. Comes right back around, showing the futility. I've got scriptures. We're not going to get as far as I need to here today if I don't stop talking. 1 John 3 and 8. The one who practices sin is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. The Son of God appears in his purpose that he might destroy the works of the devil. That didn't make sense. 1 John 3, 8. Okay, perhaps this is chasing the wind. I don't know. I may have gotten that scripture wrong. Let's keep, 1 John. Not 1 John, but John. Okay. So what does it say? Okay, that's what I was looking for. So the wind goes, you don't know where it's coming from. You got no, and that's one of the reasons that Solomon uses chasing the wind. What about verse 7? All the rivers flow into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers flow, there they flow again. Does the ocean ever fill up? The rivers are steady flowing to it. They're headed that way, but what happens to the ocean? And basically, what happens to the rivers? They keep on flowing. Mississippi gets a little dry every now and then, we see, but it's only a matter of time. So we see this futility in nature that Solomon is talking about. So verses 8 through 11, we continue that his examples from nature demonstrate this point, but he's not done. It's also obvious with mankind. Verse 8, all things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it. His eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is his ear filled with hearing. So, we have three of our senses he refers to here. Speaking, seeing, hearing. Still, we all fall short. All things are wearisome. It just wears us out. Man cannot find satisfaction. Always be content. When it's cold outside, what do we want? Oh man, summer's coming. When it's hot outside, what do we want? Man, if it just cool off winter, we're never satisfied with anything. We always want more. And this all things could be translated all words, which ties to the next thing he's saying, that man is not able to tell it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing it. No matter what we hear, see, or say we always want more. We're not satisfied with it. There's got to be something else. The grass is always greener, right? Somewhere else. Verse 9, that which has been is that which will be, and that which has been done is that which will be done. So there's nothing new under the sun. We don't learn from history, do we? People now try to either one of two different things. This is a new concept in my lifetime, that we try to ignore history, play like it didn't happen, or we just try to change it. We just say something about it. Well, history's already done. You can't do that. That's futile as well. Solomon's saying it right here. That's which already been. What will be is already done. Which is done is going to be done. So there's nothing new under the sun. We're not learning from history the good or the bad. Neither of that. Is there anything, verse 10, which one might say, see this is new? Already it has existed for ages which were before us. Well, you might want to stop and think about that a minute. Now, wait a second. There's nothing new with computers and technology. What about an airplane? Solomon didn't have an airplane, did he? He had a chariot, didn't he? So an airplane is just another means of transportation. It's nothing new. It's just a new way to do the same thing. Yes, sir.
I always look at things like this, human actions have never changed over, whatever generations there have been. Our actions are still the same as human beings. Things might change around you because you create new things to make life easier, but our actions are still the exact same.
Nothing is new. What about guided missiles? They had a catapult thing with that rock on it, didn't they? That they threw. It's the same thing. It's just a different method to do the same thing. That's what Solomon's saying. There's not really anything new. You might figure out a new way to do the same thing, but it's not a new thing. It's just the same thing that we're doing over and over. All right, verse 11. There is no remembrance of early things, and also of later things which will occur. There will be for them no remembrance among those all who will come later still. Man will always die and be forgotten. The next generation will not remember the previous one. Even thousands of years since Solomon's day, the point's more remarkable. Human vanity basically seen in 2 points. Man is incapable of accomplishing anything of permanent worth, and man is incapable of doing anything that will keep him from dying or to keep his memory alive. All right, so what about Mickey Mantle? We remember him. Some people don't. You know, there are people that I ask musically all the time, musicians that were so famous, and you ask some younger guys that, and they look at you like a cow looking at a new gate, you know. Who? What are you talking about? What about Mickey Mantle? I just picked him out. I mean, he did things, didn't he, that should we remember him by, or Babe Ruth, or sports figures, whoever? Well, they'll remember for a while, or even remember now. But the basic point that Solomon is making is, okay, what good's that doing Mickey right now? And what good is it doing us to remember Mickey right now? Because I'm going to die and forget about it, and you're going to die and forget that you gave into them anyway. So we see this concept of whatever man's doing is of vanity, okay? So at this point, we kind of begin the first section of the preacher's sermon. Thus far, it has focused basically on a secular viewpoint. That is the way that one would look at things. What have you noticed? A name that has not been mentioned so far in this book. God. Okay, so all of this vanity and all of this futility is seen with the absence of God. Okay, now granted, Solomon's smarter than smarter than this. He's just laying out his sermon. We've got to get to the end of the story. So, we see that man has failed to do any productive works. Verse 12, I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem. Have been king, was king. That's some of the reason that people say, well, why is he saying, the preacher, that he was king? I thought Solomon was king presently. Well, it sounds like an old man at the end of his life. Yeah, he was king. And I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under heaven. He's trying to figure it all out. I have been king for a long time. So he's trying to use his wisdom to influence his search for wisdom. It says that he set his mind. I set my mind to seek and explore. Seek and explore, these are the same two words when they sent the spies, when Moses sent the spies into the land of Canaan, okay? No stone unturned. Go look and see what you see. Discover anything we need real information. It's recon. We're talking about we need to know what's going on. This is the same thing that Solomon is saying. I have done as much exploration into this thing as I can, and I have set my mind. I remember Robert Rawson talked about that word set is like when you put down mortar and put a stone or a concrete block in it, and you wiggle it and set that thing down in there. It's set. It's not going anywhere. Okay? So Solomon set his mind to explore wisdom. That's what God had given him, was wisdom. That was his main tool, so that's the tool he's using. You use what you got to work with, right? So the word wisdom appears 28 times in these 12 chapters. That's a lot. He's talking about it. It means technical skills, aptitude, experience, good sense. He was definitely the man for the job. Solomon's research is described with two verbs, seek and explore. It was a grievous task, he said, an evil task. He may be saying that it's not a good thing to try to figure this out. It is a grievous task which God has given us to the sons of men to be affiliated with. It's the first mention of God's name all the way into 13 verses, over halfway through this first chapter. So he says it's a grievous thing. Maybe it's not a good thing. It's afflicted. Are we going to figure it out? Solomon says we're not going to figure it out. He's the smartest man that ever was, and he couldn't figure it out. So it's a grievous task for us. Using the term evil means maybe that it's something we should stay away from. Maybe we shouldn't be trying to figure it out. It's futile. It's vanity. It's vain. We're not going to be able to figure it out. I have seen all the works which have been done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after the wind. What did we say back a few verses ago, and what did John say about the wind? Where's it going? Where did it come from? And where's it going to go again when it gets through going where it was? Where's it? We going to chase that? Striving after the wind. That's why he continues to use that analogy that it's not going to be something that we can do. I have seen all the works, striving after the wind. Verse 15, futile to straighten what is crooked. 15 says it's crooked. What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. Man, oh man, I've dealt with stuff in the drilling industry and in construction, everything. You know, you bend that nail, you take it out, and you try to tap it back down, but can you ever get it perfectly straight again? And if you hit it wrong, what's it going to do? It's going to bend right back. Now, later on in Ecclesiastes, we're going to talk about what God has bent. Now, we certainly cannot straighten that, but Solomon's saying if it's crooked, what about an axle on a vehicle? You going to be able to straighten that thing out and make it roll true again? No. If it's been bent, it's futile to try to straighten it. What's lacking cannot be counted. If it ain't there, how do you know? So we see these continued examples in physical life of futility, things that Solomon is saying, look at all of these things here. They're futile. They're of no redeeming value. We're not going to get anything out of this. Okay, man has failed to use wisdom to his own benefit. I said to myself, behold, I have magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were over Jerusalem before me, and my mind had observed a wealth of wisdom and of knowledge. Let's read a little bit more and see if Solomon is qualified. Melvin, you're closest, so I always holler at you first. 1 Kings 3 and 12. Johnny Bonner, what about 1 Kings 4, 30 through 34? Johnny Pace, 1 Kings 10, 23 and 24. 1 Kings 3 and 12. What you got, Melvin?
Behold, I have done according to your word. Behold, I have given you a wise and discerning heart, so that there has been no one like you before you, nor shall there be no one like you forever.
So he's telling the truth here when he says, I have set my mind to know wisdom. Behold, I've magnified and increased wisdom more than all who were before me. God told him that's what he was going to give him, right? On top of that, what about 1 Kings 4, Johnny B?
From all nations, people came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, that by all the kings of the world they heard of his wisdom.
So we see that they're coming from all over the world because of this man's wisdom. 10 and 10 and 23, 24.
Thus King Solomon settled all the kings of the earth in riches and wisdom. The whole earth sought the presence of Solomon to hear his wisdom, which God had listened to his mind.
Okay, so if anybody else said this, if I said that, be kind of bragging, wouldn't it? Or whatever. It wouldn't certainly be to the point. I know better than to say that about myself. But can Solomon say this? Yeah, we got proof. God gave it to him, and God said this is the smartest guy. So he's qualified to say this. I have magnified and increased before me. My mind has observed a wealth of wisdom and knowledge. Once again, and I set my mind to know wisdom, to know madness and folly. I realize that this is also striving after the wind. Wisdom would be the most logical thing for someone to approach, but if you're going to understand mankind and to understand everything, what do you also got to look at? Madness, folly, stupidity, foolishness. He talks about that. We're going to get into all of that stuff. So Solomon says, I'm not just looking at this, at all the good stuff. I'm looking at all the crazy stuff too. If you're going to understand mankind, you sure need to be looking at the crazy stuff, right? That's for real. Okay, so madness, delusion, and deception, unprincipled conduct. Moral law is now meaningless, okay? So we're not going to follow God. We're not looking at any of that stuff. We're looking at madness, and we're looking at foolishness. Folly is foolishness. Shamelessness, impulsiveness. These terms appear more than 3 times in this book. How can we understand these attitudes toward life? While we're sitting here studying this, how are we going to understand these attitudes in life? It's like chasing after the wind. We can't. If Solomon couldn't, how do we expect to? And so, what is the energy that we're spending on trying to figure all of that out? Of what value is it to us? What do we gain? Nothing. If God is not in the picture, which so far we hadn't talked about that, all the rest of that stuff is pure vanity. It's worthless. Okay, verse 18, because of much wisdom there is much grief, and in increasing knowledge results in increasing pain. How much information do we have now? And how much access to information do we have now? We got the web. We got the... Oh, really? My daughter says some crazy things sometimes. She says, why do people say www? That's much longer than just saying World Wide Web. Many more syllables, so why do you say www? You just say that. We've got the web, we got the internet. There's so much information out there. This is the information age. Back then it didn't travel very fast, but when it did, like now, the runner comes and tells the general what? We've lost the battle. Is news always good news? Not always correct either. Oh, yeah. Even if you're listening to politicians talk, right? We won't go there this morning. Oh, there are tools that, like the internet, that are, I mean, wow, how valuable is it? It helps us so much, even in this study or whatever's going on here. That's not the point. The point is, in much wisdom, there is much grief. One of the last things I wrote in this thing was also, the more you learn, the less you know. There are things that we find out about, that we know about, that causes us what? Lots of pain. I'd be willing to bet everyone in this room has something up here, knowledge that they have found out, something that they know that they wish they didn't know. Aren't there things you know that you just wish you didn't know? Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I know each of us has our own sense of what causes, what you have said causes us to go somewhere in our mind. I mean, we all have something different. I cannot stop thinking of the scene in Fiddler on the Roof. Okay, that's my world. Sunrise, sunset. What a joyous occasion, because these two people who are totally in love and have found each other are getting married. And the song is melancholy. It's so sorrowful. It's, yeah, they love each other, but what's the purpose? Because these wise older people know there is no purpose. You're happy right now, and it doesn't mean you'll lose your happiness, but we still have this hard world. We still have to toil. We still have to labor. There's no joy until, Debbie says, later when the Lord comes back. There's
Well,
no joy until then.
and that's exactly what he's laying out right here in this chapter 1. He's looking at all these aspects of nature. He's looking at all these aspects of human nature, saying, it don't matter. What about all of this? And he's going to continue to go through the wealth and the poor and the smart and the foolish and all of this stuff. And, I'm jumping ahead just a little bit, but what's going to happen to every one of those men or women? What's going to happen to them? They're going to die. So what does that make all that worth? All that worthwhile. And the other thing, and talking about the wealthy, and I'm not jumping too far ahead here, but one of the things that he said right there is all of this stuff that you gain, God has given them to the sons of man. And what do you know about what they're going to do with it next? The person that you leave your inheritance to, or the things that you leave stuff to, that you've worked your whole life scratching and clawing to get. And then what happens in the end? Next generation hadn't worked for it. They don't have any appreciation for it. They may very well throw it smooth away. What's the vanity in all of that work now that you've done?
Well, Casey, just go down to Cotton Warehouse.
Understand? Yeah, yeah, so any of that stuff. Things that were a treasured item to someone. See, it's all vanity. Okay, because there's much wisdom, there's much grief, increased knowledge resulting in much pain. All right, so some things, I don't know, this was a little bit of a stretch here, but Ephesians 5, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians. Ephesians 5:11. And do not participate in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead be exposed to them. For it is disgraceful even to speak of the things which are done by them which are done in secret. So that was a reference that I had to knowledge, to finding out things that you really don't want to know about. There are things that we know that we wish that we didn't know. Okay, some knowledge can be futile. The more you learn, the less you know. All right, we got a little bit of time right here. 1 John 2, 15 through 17. We'll skip over this one for time. What about John 5, 28? Lee, 2 Corinthians 5, 10. And then Revelation 20, verse 11. Who had not called on yet? Anybody that wants to snag that one, do it. And please do, because I'll be... What about you, brother? You got it? Revelation 20, 11? No, I'm talking to Cole. Okay. All right. The things of this world are vanity, and we should not seek the things of the world. What about 1 John 2:15? What you got over there? What about the things of the world? They're vanity. God created the world. He created the sun, the rivers, the wind with stability that is intended to provide comfort and stability for us. Trying to figure them out may be the grievous task. Yes, sir. Revelation 20, 11 through 15. Did I give somebody 2 Corinthians? Oh. All right. Who's got it? 2 Corinthians 5? Yeah. Okay. Whether good or evil, you're gonna pay for what you've done, whether it was good or bad. We should devote our lives not to achieving fame or fortune, because they will not last or be remembered. Too much work. What have we got down here? We got Luke 12:13, which is the parable about the man building all his barns. I got so much stuff here, I don't have enough barns to put it in. What about Revelation? We never read that, did we? So, the moral of this application is that life offers us an opportunity to do things that are worthwhile. And if we do those things that are worthwhile, these scriptures here tell us about the judgment when we will be judged by the things that we've done, whether they were worthwhile or whether they were futile. Okay, thanks for your attention. This is about it. We will go into chapter 2 next week. If you have questions or comments, save them and we will address them next week.